On Christmas Eve, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, 10 children went to bed in their family's home. By morning, 5 of them were gone, not dead in any way that could be confirmed, not buried in any grave that ever received them, just gone in the way that leaves a family permanently broken, searching for something they could never prove and could never stop believing. The house burned. The investigators came and concluded what they concluded, and George and Jennie Sodder spent the next 4 decades refusing to accept it. They put up a billboard on Route 16. They hired investigators. They followed every lead that came to them and some that didn't. They never stopped. 5 children, no remains, no resolution, and a family that spent 40 years refusing to believe the answer they were given. The question was never where the fire started. The question was where the children went. George and Jennie Sodder were Italian immigrants who had built a life in Fayette County. They had 10 children, a large family by any measure, and a visible one in their community. George ran a trucking business. By the accounts that have survived, they were a family with roots, with presence, with the kind of stability that comes from working hard in a place long enough that people know your name. On Christmas Eve, 1945, the older children stayed up late. George went to bed. Jennie was still awake when the fire started. Sometime after midnight, in the early hours of Christmas morning, she woke the household. 4 of the children and George escaped. 5 did not come out. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty, ranging from age 5 to 14, were last seen alive in that house on the night of December 24th, 1945. The fire moved fast. By the time it was over, the structure was gone, and when searchers went through what remained, they found no conclusively identified human remains. None. That finding, the absence of remains, is the documented fact at the core of everything that followed. The official conclusion was accidental fire, cause attributed to faulty wiring. Investigators from the local level examined the scene. The family was told the children had perished in the blaze, that the fire had burned hot enough and long enough to consume the remains entirely. The Sodders did not accept that explanation. They had questions that the official record did not answer to their satisfaction, and they pursued those questions for the rest of their lives. Some of what they raised has been verified in the sources available, some has not. The absence of human remains is documented. Searchers went through the site and found nothing conclusively identified. The official cause is documented: faulty wiring, accidental. What is not documented in the earliest sources is much of what later became the dramatic spine of the mystery narrative. The missing ladder, the trucks that would not start, the strange phone call Jennie described, the power that allegedly stayed on in part of the house. These details appear in retrospective accounts and family testimony. They may be accurate. They cannot be confirmed from the 1945 record as it currently stands in publicly available sources. A documentary that takes this case seriously has to hold that line. What is documented is what the family did next. They did not accept the conclusion and move on. They searched. They hired private investigators. In the early 1950s, they erected a billboard on Route 16, the main road running through Fayette County, displaying the faces of the 5 missing children and asking for information. That billboard stood for decades, by most accounts until around the time Jennie Sodder died in 1988. Nearly 40 years of a family's refusal mounted on a highway in public for anyone passing through to see. George Sodder died in 1969, still without resolution. Jennie outlived him by 19 years, still without resolution. In 1968, a photograph arrived in the mail. It showed a young man, and on the back, handwritten, were words referencing Louis Sodder and the phrase, "I love Brother Frankie." The family believed it might be Louis, now grown. The identity of the man in the photograph was never verified. The origin of the letter was never established. It arrived, and it offered nothing conclusive, and it added another layer to a weight the family had already been carrying for 23 years. The case moved from local tragedy to national story in the 1960s when a Life magazine article brought it to a wider audience and stabilized the narrative that most people now encounter when they find the Sodder case. That article and the retrospective journalism and true crime coverage that followed it across decades hardened certain details into the standard account: the missing ladder, the stalled trucks, the threatening phone calls, the anti-Mussolini theory, which held that George Sodder's public criticism of Mussolini before the war had made him enemies who may have arranged the fire as retaliation. These elements are part of the story as it is now told. They are not part of the story as it can be verified from the earliest sources. That distinction matters, not because the family was wrong to raise the questions, but because the documentary record and the folk narrative have become so intertwined in this case that they are now nearly impossible to separate without being explicit about where one ends and the other begins. What can be said with confidence? The official explanation left gaps that were never satisfactorily closed. No remains, no definitive identification, no resolution that the family or the public record ever fully accepted. There are cases that stay open not because of dramatic new evidence, but because the original closure was insufficient. The Sodder case is one of those. The fire happened. 5 children were never accounted for in any form that satisfied the standards of proof a family deserves. The investigation concluded what it concluded, and that conclusion did not answer the absence of remains in a way the family found credible or that the public record has since vindicated. Whether the children died in the fire and the remains were lost or destroyed, whether something else happened that night, those questions have never been definitively answered. George Sodder went to his grave in 1969 without an answer. Jennie Sodder went to hers in 1988 without an answer. The billboard came down around the time she died, after nearly 4 decades on Route 16. The photograph from 1968 sits unverified. West Virginia State Police have no publicly confirmed active investigation. The case exists now in the space between official closure and actual resolution, a space that is, in this instance, the size of 5 children and 43 years of a family that refused to stop looking. Here is what the Sodder case actually is. Underneath the true crime packaging, it has accumulated over 80 years. It is a documented tragedy, a fire, 5 children unaccounted for, no remains, no resolution. It is a family that responded to institutional inadequacy with the only tools available to them: a billboard, private investigators, public pressure, and the refusal to perform a grief they did not feel they had earned the right to. It is a 1968 photograph that arrived from nowhere and went nowhere. carrying a name and a phrase that meant everything to one family and has been verified by no one. And it is a question that remains open, not dramatically, not with the certainty of conspiracy, but in the quiet and devastating way that unresolved things stay open. 5 children left a house in Fayette County on the night of December 24, 1945, and were never conclusively accounted for. That is the sentence the record supports. Everything else is what a family built around that sentence to keep from drowning in it. That's another voice from the hollow. If this one stayed with you, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. The Stories America Left Behind. That's another voice from the hollow. If this one stayed with you, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. The Stories America Left Behind.